asking for money to fix the problem, how do you know how much to ask for and how it can be fixed?
Great question about damages. How would you answer that, Jay?
So if you're asking for money to fix a problem, I'll tell you first that that's really sort of outside the typical routine under the Landlord-Tenant Act. You don't really have a right to ask for money. The way the Landlord-Tenant Act works is that you've got the right to demand action, and the landlord's supposed to take that action. And if he doesn't, you've got the right to terminate your lease. There is something of a self-help remedy for some other conditions called essential services, like if your heat's out, your hot water's out, that sort of thing. But in the context of mold, you're really kind of limited to asking the landlord to take action. And I would prefer it, frankly, because if you start agreeing to do the work yourself, I'm going to take some money from the landlord to get a contractor in here or to get some Kills paint or something to put on it, you're sort of taking some ownership of that needs to stay with the landlord, frankly. And so, but if you're in that situation and for whatever reason you've decided that's the way to go, then it's just going to depend on a case-by-case basis. But I think you got to drill down to what Kirby was talking about, which is that mold came from somewhere. There's a source. And so you got to identify what the source is. And so then from there, you're going to know how expensive it is to fix it and how much money you need to get that done.
I think that's a great answer. I would just add, we've had some cases where, we put the landlord on notice. They have a duty to address it. They did not. Then you enter the world, sort of what we call a tort or negligence case as well. They have a clear duty. They've breached that duty, and then you get to lay out your damages once you make that argument. So if I had a client who had to move out to rent another short-term apartment, and we asked that the landlord pay for all of that. Certainly had medical bills that from that point on, we felt like the landlord had some responsibility for. So there is those are considerations that an attorney should really help you with, knowing what damages are allowable or what would be reasonable. Some folks allege pretty serious emotional distress and sort of things that are hard to put a receipt to, but those can be legitimate in certain circumstances. You're allowed to ask that, and if it's in a really egregious case, rare, but a jury or a court could find punitive damages. If a landlord is very blatantly ignoring the law and their responsibilities, certainly that's something that could come into play. But those cases are rare, I think, realistically, unless you have a big apartment complex with multiple units dealing with this. You might see that more often. But like Jay said, a lot of these cases, it's a situation where we just want the landlord to do what they're supposed to do under a lease agreement, provide a habitable apartment. That may be expensive for them, but that's what happens when you're a landlord. You have to provide habitable places for folks to live, to have a right to get that rent. So that's kind of how we look at those cases on what to ask for.